Wow, just hit record. What a weird feeling after about a month and a half of not doing it. And this video is going to be an explanation of why that is so. And I'm going to keep this completely raw and unedited. For anyone who's new here, my name is Zach Weiss. And for anyone who's watching this and you're a current subscriber, thank you so much for sticking around through everything. This last month and a half has been just crazy chaos in my life, just so much going on, and I wanted to just catch you all up through a story, and not just like me venting to you, but I'm going to try to piece together all the life lessons I learned along the way so that maybe one person, if you're watching this, can relate, or hopefully this can inspire you in some shape or form. So I'm going to start with about a month and a half ago, where I'm starting to think about where I'm going to move. So my lease is up at the end of this month. This month is July, and I believe I'm recording this on the 28th or the 20th of the 27th or 28th of the month. So it's right at the end of the lease, and my original plan was to move around throughout my entire 20s. Every 2 years I wanted to live in a new location. I wanted to live in every state, try living internationally, use my 20s to increase my breadth of experience in the world. So staying somewhere for more than 2 years just didn't make sense to me. So I started thinking about where could I go? I started thinking about New York, Texas, maybe LA, even though I lived already, but for YouTube there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I know some people out there. My sister lives there. But I never thought about living in Boston. So I was ready to, I was starting to look for apartments out of state just to kind of play with the idea. I was going to buy a plane ticket and try different places out. And then, of course, the pandemic starts and the illness breaks out. And now I don't know what to do. Now, fortunately, I have built a really strong group of friends, a strong foundation of friends out here in Boston. And my life has been a rocky road, a roller coaster of sorts, to where I've had to move every single 2 years of my life because I was raised by a single parent. My father passed away when I was very young, and due to finances, I never really had a solid foundation. So I always was moving in states and different locations. I was in and out of school, so I never really made good friends. But here I built a community, and that was something I would be giving up if I moved out of state. So you're weighing your pros and cons, and I'm going crazy. So it's the beginning of June, and I have no idea where I'm gonna go. Do I stay in Boston? Do I leave Boston? There's a pandemic, and I ultimately realized that during COVID, it's not easy to go out and venture into a new place and make friends, because my biggest strategy to make new friends is to go to as many social events as possible and just meet as many people as possible until someone just clicks. And that's not going to happen with Zoom. You're not going to just go to a bunch of Zoom calls and make a bunch of friends. I just don't think it's that simple, especially during a time like this. So that kind of was having me lean a little bit towards Boston, but then I have the opportunity to live maybe back at home where I'm from in Chicago. There's so many decisions to make. And then one day, a very close friend of mine gives me a phone call, and he said, "Hey Zach, I just want to let you know my apartment just burned down. My apartment building, along with 9 other buildings, just burned flat to the ground, and I lost everything." And that's a whole side story, because this guy is so incredible that the only thing he was focused during that time was the person who lived above him. He wanted to raise money for that person who really lost everything. At least he had a job and security and a way to replace all the items he lost, but the woman above him didn't. But at the moment that he calls me and tells me this information, all the stress, all the anxiety, everything that I was thinking about, where am I going to do, what's my next move, went away. And something clicked. I knew at that moment that we were meant to live together. So I said, "The stars were aligning. I think you should be my roommate." And at the time, it was probably bad timing, because he was in the midst of the chaos. His hands, he was covered in like gross stuff because of like, he was going through and trying to salvage everything. His mind was in a different place, but he said, I'll think about it. And then later he calls me back and said, I've given it some thought and I would love to be a roommate. And that piece was fixed. All that stress just unfolded on itself because I let go of my control and I waited for the universe to take over. And it did. And now I have a roommate. And that also means I'm staying in Boston, which I was kind of bittersweet about because I wanted to start a new journey. But at the same time, the relationships here are irreplaceable. And I realized that maybe Boston was the right move. Now, the lesson you can take from this specific part of the story is that you always focus on planning and thinking about all the different opportunities you can take at any given time. There's like an infinite amount of decisions you can make. But the truth is, you're not as in control as you think. And you can plan and you can do whatever you can to try to feel like you're in control. But ultimately, crazy things like a pandemic might start, God forbid a car accident or a sickness comes out. You don't know what the future is going to hold, and you really aren't as in much of control as you think. What you can do is put yourself out there and really give yourself a break. So like, I gave myself a break from stressing out about where I'm going to live, and then everything just worked out. Now I have a roommate. Now after that, here's the next step. So it's a couple weeks into this, and we're talking about going and being roommates, but I'm getting stressed again. I have this really bad stress problem where I'm always trying to think about what's next. And that got to my head so bad that I was like, I need to get out of Boston. And fortunately, at the same time, a close friend of mine sends me a message and said, hey, do you want to go to Florida this weekend? And at first, I hesitated because, Florida, I was, during COVID, I'm not sure that this is such a great idea. But at the same time, I was so stressed that I pushed myself and I said, you know what, I'm just going to go. And I blindly just bought plane tickets. I got pushback from my friends. I got pushback from my boss at work. I got pushback from everyone. No one told me not to go, but they were heavily judging me because Florida was one of the worst places to go during this experience, but I just needed to get out of there. And on top of that, I was really worried because, so the close friend who had his apartment burned down, unfortunately, his father has really bad pancreatic cancer. And another close friend of mine lives with her grandfather who's 95 years old. So while I can afford to get sick for myself, I can't afford to get them sick. So I was really, really concerned about that going into Florida. So I said, I'm going to take every precaution possible. And my anxious self gets like plastic gloves, like 7 bottles of hand sanitizer, a ton of masks, and I'm on my way. I'm basically like, I'm being as careful as humanly possible for this trip. But the moment I land there, I check my phone and I look at the local news, and it happens to be that they've reached a new record high of over 10,000 cases in one day, and I'm just like, wow, what a great vacation already, off to a start. And everyone in my friend group is like, I told you so, and now I'm really depressed about this. Now, the friend that I met in Florida, he had a couple other people join him. Him and his friends were from Virginia, and in Virginia, where I'm from Boston, they take it very differently, and they didn't really take it seriously because they don't have anyone to get sick, and they're young, and they can afford, at least in their minds, they can afford to get sick. So they weren't wearing masks, and neither was anyone else in Florida. I stayed around South Beach. Everyone was partying. Everyone was having fun. And here I am with my plastic gloves, my mask, and I'm just going insane, basically, not enjoying the moment, not staying present, because all I'm worried about is not getting my friends sick when I get home. And then after this trip, I get back very resentful of the friends who I visited in Florida, and also just stressed out because I didn't want to get sick. I immediately got a test right when I got back, and then called my doctor and said, I just got back from Florida and I got a test, but I'm a little worried that this might be a false negative. Like, what should I do? And he said, Zach, you just got back from the cesspool, the center of the coronavirus. So it would be almost illogical for you to not quarantine. You should 100% do a full 14-day quarantine. And at this point, like, my face just drops, but I buckle down and I do it. And day 14 of this, and by the way, during this quarantine, all my friends are posting pictures and doing things like together. Like, so my friend group's about like 10 people, and we only just see each other. Yeah, so it's very safe because we kind of know where everyone has been, but everyone's posting group pictures, like they're like having fun, they're spending time together, and I'm just stuck in my bedroom doing nothing but work and sleep. And it's getting really hard, but then day 14 hits, which happens to be my birthday. And for this birthday, I had a lot of time to think about it, and I decided that for this birthday, I wanted to be a gift giver rather than a gift receiver, because I felt like it would be more impactful and it would be a good way to just like restore, my relationships that I have taken a time off from. So like during the last week of my quarantine, I spent like coming up with a plan for what gifts I should get for each person. And I came to the conclusion for one of my close friends, her mom had a tough day the day before my birthday. So I decided to get her favorite things, which were pretzels, cheese, and wine. There was this one store in Boston called the Prudential Center. It's called Italy. And I called my friend, the one who's my new roommate, who went through the apartment burning down, and he's just an incredible person. And I said, hey man, I need a ride to Italy because I want to get this gift for Cindy, which is my friend's mom. And and he says, of course. He comes and picks me up. And I also got a gift for him. And I didn't tell him about this. This was a big secret. But I decided to get him, because he was moving in with me into a Jewish community, I got him a Jewish prayer book. And I had his name inscribed on it on the front cover. And I felt like that would be like a good welcome gift into the community when he moved to where I live, or in the same neighborhood. So I had it wrapped up, and I picked it up from the bookstore that very morning by foot before he picked me up. I come outside and I pull out the book that's wrapped in wrapping paper. And I say, here you go. And he looks at me and he's surprised that I gave him a gift on my birthday. And then he said, hey, listen, man, thank you so much for the gift, but if you're going to go out of your way to give me a gift on your birthday, then at least let me give you mine. So he goes into his trunk and he pulls out a very similar shaped object in very similar colored wrapping paper. And then we look at each other, it's both wrapped right now, and we're like, there's no way that this is the same gift, right? But we were unsure, but he said, man, just take out your phone and let's record this moment just in case. So we go into the front of his car, and I pull out my phone, I hit record, and then we start to unwrap each other's gifts. And then we find out very quickly that we got each other the exact same books with each other's names inscribed on it. At that moment, we were both shocked. At that moment, we were both shocked. And we didn't know, no one planned this. No one knew that this was going to happen. And it was just out of the blue. And it was just like the stars were aligning. When you go through these moments where everything just makes sense. And it was really a beautiful morning. Now, that's only the beginning of this story. We drive over to pick up the gifts for my friend's mom, Cindy. And during that travel, we got the cheese, we got the wine, now we just have to get the pretzels. We get a call from my close friend, and she tells me, so Cindy's daughter, her name is Marika. So I get a call from her, and she says, my car is broken down in the middle of the road, and I need your help. She sends me a picture of her keys, which are completely snapped in half. And she said, my car is dead, and I need you to come help me and jump the car. And she's in the middle of nowhere. She's 25 minutes away in a suburb. And we immediately stop in our tracks, stop getting the pretzel, which is obviously not as important, and we start heading out to her. We get to her, she's on like a highway, and her car is on the shoulder of a road, and it looks like it's dead. So I take my friend's car, and I start to get the jumper cables ready, but then I have a thought. I'm like, you know what, maybe there's a chance that the car isn't dead. Maybe because the keys were snapped, she just wasn't able to turn on the car. So I said, here, hand me your keys, and I started to jiggle with it, and within like maybe a couple seconds, I was able to turn on the car with no problem. I'm telling you, it was like, it wasn't dead. And at that moment, I was a little bit like irritated because we went all the way out of nowhere to just start a car that wasn't dead, and I felt like, you know, it wasn't wasted time because, you know, we got to spend some time with my friend. And she said, hey, while the car was dead, I just took my own liberty to check out like the nearby forest, which was like to the right of the shoulder. There was like a forest, and she said, I found some cool things like a cool tree if you want to check it out. And I was like, you know what, I'm already here, why not? So I start to go down this little path, and as soon as I veer the corner, I see on the ground that there's a happy birthday sign on the ground. And at this point, I'm like being very naive because like I'm, you know, still thinking about the car, and I'm like, Marika, are we crashing someone's thing? I don't know if we should be here right now. And I see a lake. And then as I put on my glasses and I actually like get closer to the event, I see that all my friends are there. And as soon as I see that, everyone just starts saying happy birthday. And my friend, it was a big guys, it was a setup. The whole entire day was a setup, and all my friends surprised me for my birthday. And there was like a big unicorn, and it was a big grill, and it was just like the most incredible experience, unforgettable, and I'm ever gonna have in my life. And this was the day I got out of my quarantine. After that, now we have to return to apartment searching, and my lease is starting to dry up. And now we were not finding a place, and the only places we were finding are small, decrepit, like not really for, you know, neither of us wanted to live there. So once again, I fall into this trap of, I don't know what to do, none of these apartments are good, and I'm in a better situation, my living situation right now, than any apartments that I would choose. They're more expensive and smaller, and where am I going to film my videos, right? So I'm starting to get a little bit down in the dumps again, not knowing what to do. And then another friend of mine, my other very close friend, his name is Isaiah, decided, you know, he wanted to move back to New York because he wanted to save money, and he just felt like it was a smart thing to do. And I was really down about that, but I said, hey man, like, what would keep you here? Just curious. And he said, well, if I found a place that was cheap and had garage parking, because he's a car fanatic. And I was like, interesting. So then, once again, the stars aligned, and I realized that maybe my group of two should be a group of three. So I told him, why don't we all just be roommates? And he liked the idea. He was like, you know, just like keep me in the loop. Maybe look for some 3 bedrooms while you're going instead of 2 bedrooms. And then we ended up looking for 3 bedrooms. And this is, I'm telling you, this was last week. This is so recent. We found a 3-bedroom that was marked down $1,000 because of the pandemic. And we locked it in. We're all paying under $1,000. He's in the smallest room, so he's paying $700 with a garage space. And now all my friends were under one roof, and we're together, and everything is just making sense. Now, at the same time of the apartment searching, there was one more piece of the puzzle I had to figure out. My lease is up at the end of the month, and my new lease doesn't start till September. So what am I going to do for the month of August? So I decided, you know, it makes sense to visit my mom and my family, my grandparents in Chicago. Now, the problem with that is my grandparents are in their 90s and my mom is in her 60s, and it would just be irresponsible for me to just fly out there because then I'd be like a grenade. So what's the safest way to get there? Of course, by driving. I don't have a car. Once I started talking about this with my 2 friends, originally they said they were going to do a road trip with me, which was such an exciting proposal. But then for various reasons, one of my friends was the one with his dad who has cancer, so he couldn't afford to leave him, which makes total sense because he wouldn't want to have a regret if he was on a road trip and he had an emergency. And the other one just couldn't leave because of work. So I'm back to square one, no car, now I need to get to Chicago. So plan one was to rent a car, but because I was able to score rent for so low, I said, you know what, why don't I just buy a car? And I ended up just like looking for a car, and I decided to lease a car, and the car lease ended up happening on the same day as the apartment search ended. So like all of the chaos just kind of figured itself out on the last day. And it was just such an incredible, like just seeing that from an external view, just like all the craziness, all the stress just resolving itself, because it wasn't bad stress, it was good stress. And I learned from all of this that you just have to lay loose and let go. You know, everything will figure itself out. You just have to stay positive. And all that chaos led to like me worrying about things so much I lost my creativity. And I had to use my mornings, my very, very small amount of spare time, to do all these things like finding a car, finding an apartment, making these decisions. And you just have to take things one step at a time. And really understand that you need to manage the chaos in your own life before you can manage the chaos in others. And now we're approaching the end of the month, and I'm about to take on my journey with my new car to visit Chicago. And I can't wait to take you on it with me. I'm back, and I hope that you can take this as an apology for taking a long time away from you guys. But I miss you all too much, and I can't wait to be back. And I just want to say, like, love you all. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much for staying to the end of this video and sharing this moment with me. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.